welcome to my personal model of counseling final project. I have put a lot of time and effort and thought into this project, and I'm really excited to share it with you. I know that as I continue through grad school and afterwards, this will continue to be shaped. But I really appreciate the theories that we've learned about this semester, and I am really excited to share my personal model of counseling. So, a little introduction to me. My name is Sarah Fincher. I tried really hard on Google Slides to figure out a way to show my face while I was recording this, but it did not want to work, unfortunately. So, here is my face. I figured I would include some important things about me that have shaped my view of counseling and kind of my personal life philosophy. So, one of those first things is my religious upbringing. I grew up in a very conservative Christian home. A lot of shoulds and oughts, and you must do this. And I was told from a young age that I should live up to this expectation of being an example to everybody about what a good Christian girl looks like. And since, leaving and becoming an adult, I have deconstructed that. And that process of deconstruction has been really formative for me and something that has really informed my life philosophy. Some of the theories that I have picked really connect to this process of deconstructing beliefs and opening up, this can of worms of what do I really think, what do I really feel, and is this a helpful belief? Is it unhelpful? Why am I keeping it? So that process of deconstruction has been really meaningful to me and really formative for who I am as a counselor. Another really important aspect of my experience that I bring to this philosophy has been my work with eating disorder patients. So I've worked at an inpatient facility for eating disorder patients for 3 years. I primarily work with child and adolescent populations, but I've also worked with adults, and this experience has really helped me to know, first off, that this is where I want to be. I want to be in the mental health field. I love working with my patients. I really love seeing them recover and work through their challenges. And I also have seen a lot of higher acuity mental health conditions through my work. I've obviously, seen depression, anxiety. I've seen very acute OCD, a lot of suicidality, multiple personalities, borderline patients, and I'm, sure that there's more that I haven't experienced, but this time that I've been working with these patients has really helped me gain my confidence and also showed me that some patients get very, very stuck and they need some very specific and tailored interventions towards their specific mental health issue. And so because of that, that also has shaped my model of counseling. Lastly, I thought I would put in here some of my counseling values. Resilience, compassion, and integrity. Resilience is one of my top values, and I think as a counselor, I aim to help my clients become more resilient to life, and be able to feel confident that they can overcome the challenges that they will face in life. Compassion is one of my values because I want my clients to learn to feel compassion towards themselves and also to experience compassion from me in a therapeutic setting. And then lastly, integrity. I aim to work with all of the clients that I will have with the utmost integrity and working towards their best interest and their good, and uphold the best practices for them. So, that's who I am. The purpose of this assignment is first to reflect on the semester, secondly, to identify the theories that fit my life philosophy, thirdly, to create a model of counseling, and then lastly, to identify goals for learning. So, first part, course reflections. As I was reflecting over the course of the semester and the work that I put in, a lot of the things that I noticed were about the therapeutic relationship. Often in my discussion board posts and in my paper, I wrote a lot about how important that is to me. And I think that's because of my experience working with eating disorder patients. I've seen how my personal relationship with them has an impact on their recovery, an impact on the way that they go through the process of trying to get better. So I just think it's really important. It's one of those foundational pieces for me. So I noticed that in the course reflections. Additionally, I noticed that some of my comments towards some of these theories really put an emphasis on not rushing the client. I think a lot of the fast-paced theories, while they do have a place, and I think that they can be beneficial for some clients, for me, as I was thinking about them, I kept thinking, I don't know how I would like that, because I want time to kind of open up first and trust you that you're going to do all these things that are actually going to help me. And if we just jump into a really fast-paced, like hitting everything really hard with the interventions, it can be helpful, but I don't feel like it would make me feel safe to be honest. And so that's something that I bring into my theories that I chose and why I chose them as well. And then another key nugget that was a part of the course reflections was this potato story by Carl Rogers. I think that is kind of a key cornerstone in my model of counseling, and I'll get more into that as we jump into the theories. But that story was something that I think really put some things into place for me. As I read it, I was like, this makes sense. And because of my deconstruction, I've had a lot of questions about what is the nature of people? How do we do all these like existential big question things? So that was a really helpful piece for me. So jumping into the theories, if you haven't guessed, my first theory is person-centered. I decided to include a quote into each theory that I chose. So this one is from Carl Rogers. It says, "We think we listen, but very rarely do we listen with real understanding, true empathy. Yet listening of this very special kind is one of the most potent forces for change that I know." So, why person-centered? I think going through this program, experiencing labs definitely had an impact on me. But additionally, I feel like even outside of my experience with labs, or even this course, I've noticed that I am drawn to the element of relationship in the therapeutic space. So the way that we view patients, the way that we interact with them, I naturally come from a person-centered space with the clients that I work with already. And I think this idea that's captured in the potato story of this self-actualizing tendency where people inside of them innately have this push towards growth. And like in the story with the potatoes, they are growing even though, there's no space for them to grow. It's just who they are, who the potatoes are, right? And it emphasizes this capacity that people have to heal. And sometimes that capacity towards growth based on the environment gets twisted into something that's actually maladaptive. But for them, that is them trying to grow, trying to adapt. And if we look at people as these, twisted, horrifying things that have become something evil, essentially, we miss the part of them that was trying to adapt and grow. And I think because of that, I view the nature of people as people are essentially trying to adapt, they're trying to survive and grow. And that gives a lot of compassion towards the where we've been and the processes that we've gone through, and also where we want to go. That things are not stagnant, that we do have a capacity to change and grow, and I think that provides a lot of hope as well. I think answering the question of how people change and the nature of people in this philosophy is why it's kind of a cornerstone philosophy for me, because I also think that this actualization tendency and this therapeutic relationship being a driving force of change is something that I greatly relate to. So the person of the therapist and the therapeutic relationship are also cornerstone aspects for me of therapy, and that's why I chose this as my first theory. Additionally, some key aspects that I really am drawn to are congruence, unconditional positive regard, client-driven goal setting, and then techniques being secondary. I've seen through my work with eating disorder patients that some of the therapists that work with them just really they don't try and meet them where they're at, and I think that even though they're using all of these evidence-based techniques, the clients are not motivated or they don't feel understood, and so it doesn't really land in the way that it could because they don't have that relationship. And so this emphasis on techniques being secondary really hits home with me because I've seen the impact of that. Additionally, though, my work in eating disorder care has also exposed me to a variety of patients that are very acute. I've met patients, with very severe OCD, suicidality, self-harm issues, multiple personalities, and so there's a lot of very strong mental health conditions that I have witnessed, and for some patients, if we just left it at person-centered and didn't give them any other really tailored interventions, we would be doing them a disservice. And so that leads me to my next theory, which is REBT. I'm very drawn to REBT. First off, because it's a behavior therapy, but as I was going through this process, and even in my paper, I first put down CBT because it felt like that was what was most reflective of me. And then as I've been looking over the book and trying to narrow this down, I noticed that CBT focuses more on cognitive errors in thinking, and REBT focuses more on beliefs that are irrational. And because of that belief element, I think I'm actually drawn more to REBT than to CBT, which was surprising to me as I was making this. So it kind of was a change in course that I took with this model of counseling. I still love CBT, and I think it's really valuable, but REBT focuses on beliefs, and that is a key part of my model of counseling. So, this quote for REBT says, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them." I think that's Epictetus. I don't know how to say his name, but there he is. So, for me, the key aspects of REBT are about beliefs. So, as I mentioned, the way that I grew up was with a lot of shoulds, a lot of oughts, a lot of musts about who you have to be, how this looks in the world, and REBT just really strikes a core part of me where I have deconstructed so many of my beliefs and worked on unpacking these shoulds and oughts and musts. And that is a huge part of what REBT is unpacking these rigid or extreme beliefs about events or situations and taking them and examining them and seeing if they're actually realistic or helpful. And so working on this unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional other acceptance, and unconditional life acceptance, that's the goal of REBT, and that's something that I highly align with because of my history of deconstruction. And so that's something that, because it's evidence-based, because it focuses on a lens that I really, really am drawn to, I like this intervention for patients because I think it can be really, really helpful. All right, my third and final theory of my personal model of counseling is feminist therapy. There's a lot of therapies that are similar to feminist therapy, and I kind of went back and forth on which one to pick, but ultimately, I really like feminist therapy because I am a feminist, and I really appreciate that this was made by women and a conglomeration of women, and it encapsulates a lot of the same concepts as some of these other theories, but with an emphasis on empowerment and power dynamics and gender issues that I'm very passionate about. So, the quote for this one I chose from Brene Brown. She's not obviously super tied to this theory, but I felt like the quote was appropriate. It says, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. So, some of the things that I am really drawn to about feminist therapy is the underlying philosophy of empowerment, that it's non-hierarchical, the analysis of power and gender roles and social identity. All of those things are very important to me because of my background with such a highly religious environment. There's a lot of narratives that I've been told about what it means to be a woman, what it means to be in our society, how we're supposed to act, and that can give a lot of narratives that are actually kind of harmful. And I think for me, the idea of unpacking those, recognizing the oppression, recognizing the power dynamics in our society and how that impacts us is something that I really am drawn to. Additionally, I really like that all oppression is recognized in the feminist theory. I like also that the person, the therapist, needs to be congruent with the things that the therapist is working towards. So I don't think it could be a feminist therapy and think that women should just stay at home, right? That needs to be aligned with what it means to like unpack these power dynamics. It needs to be aligned with who I am, and I think that is a part of who I am. Additionally, I appreciate that it rejects the disease model. I like the idea of working towards empowerment beyond functioning rather than just being like, you have this one problem, we're gonna fix the problem and send you on your way. So I appreciate that about feminist therapy. Some honorable mentions. So these were some theories that I liked, and I thought about including, but I didn't because the other ones were more core to me. But I wanted to briefly touch on them. We have existential, CBT, family systems, attachment, ACT, and Gestalt. Because of my deconstruction, existential has been really a big part of my life, a lot of existential questions, so I wanted to include it. CBT, I touched on before. Family systems and attachment, I am very drawn to because of my my family dynamics and how I grew up. So I would love to work with families, I would love to work with couples, and I think both of those kind of really center around those spaces, so I wanted to include them here. I also really love ACT for its focus on values. I think that can be a good intervention, especially when something like CBT has not worked for patients or clients. And then Gestalt, I really appreciate the experiential aspect of Gestalt. I think it can be powerful for clients to experience something in therapy and then be able to work through it. And I think that, something like the empty chair technique, things like that can be really powerful, and I'm really drawn to that. All right, a final summarization. So my practicum teacher, or instructor, made something like this and showed it to us, and I kind of wanted to make one for this project. As you can see, person-centered, REBT, and feminist therapy are kind of in the core part of the tree. And then some of my honorable mentions and the techniques or things that are important to me about those theories or techniques are in the top of the tree. And then lastly, my religious upbringing, or the things that have informed who I am that make the tree, are at the bottom near the roots. All right, the last part of this assignment, goals for growth. So because of person-centered being one of my top, my core foundational theory, the basic and advanced skills are something that I want to continue to grow in, and I know that I will. I would like to look for interventions or trainings or books related to REBT and feminist therapy and person-centered therapy. So I put in here to look for trainings, maybe read more books that are written by the founders of these theories, and then attend workshops, conferences, and things that are centered around these so that I can grow more. Here are my references, and that's the end. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully this has been a good summary of the things that I care about and who I want to be as a therapist, and I'm really excited to continue to grow and learn. So thank you so much.